What is the challenge remaining for Nick Saban? A lot of people ask this. In the inbox, whether it be email or Twitter or Instagram, I inevitably have anywhere from 5 to 10 people per week say something that I think it's time to address. And that something is some version of Nick Saban doesn't have anything left to accomplish. He's won so many national championships. He's number one by a country mile. If I were him, I'd retire. Well, I can guarantee you, out of few assurances in life, one of them is probably that you won't find yourself in a position to say, hey, here I am, right where Nick Saban was. I get why people say this. I know I joke a lot. I get why people say it. This is a very hard mentality to grasp. The mentality of the one percenter, it's extremely hard to grasp. It's extremely hard to even be exposed to it, to be around it. There are not many people. The law of mathematics, I had Colin run the numbers, and he told me that if you are dealing with a one percenter, that means the other 99% are not like that 1%. Colin, that did work out. We showed our work. So we did the numbers, and yes, it's really hard to find these people. There aren't many Nick Sabans walking the face of the earth in football, in government, in the food service industry, wherever you reside. You don't find many of them. How do you understand this mentality? Well, if you've ever been around it, you know. Those of you who are fortunate enough to be around those ultra-elite mentally, those ultra-elite 1% types, if you've ever been around it, it totally changes your perception on the world because you watch someone who's operating on a total different plane than you are intellectually, and you never even realized it existed. Then once your eyes are open to it, then maybe you start to adjust some things in your life. Because I do believe it can be a learned behavior. I do believe it can be a learned mentality. I don't think everyone's just born either that way or they're never going to be that way. But if you see it up close, boy, it makes you rethink some things. Goals, that's not it. I think a lot of folks wrongfully look at Nick Saban and say, well, he's got a bunch of championships, and he's sent a bunch of kids to the first round, and he's won so much, and he's the all-time this, and he's the all-time that. You're looking at his bio. If you're watching on YouTube, the guy's got several more first-round draft picks at this point than he does total losses at Alabama, 106 to be exact. And you look at the championships, 6 and counting, and you wonder, well, when is enough enough? How many more titles can one win? Well, that only makes sense if that's his goal. That's not the goal. And this is where the detachment, this is where the disconnect, I think, comes in from a normal person thinking about an abnormal person, from a 99%er thinking about a 1%er. You look at Nick Saban, if you're a 99%er and you say, he doesn't have anything left to accomplish, he would listen to you say that and laugh at how stupid that sounds to him. I'm not calling you stupid. I'm saying if you said that to him, he would laugh at it because the idea of nothing left to accomplish would be stupid. But it all comes down to this thing that I think a lot of people want to believe they've bought into, but really when it comes down to it, they haven't. And I'm talking about your personal life or your professional life, whatever the case may be, because it's boring to talk about. It's so fun to talk about goals. It's so fun to talk about how you're goal-oriented. It is far less fun to talk about the process, there's that P word, that it takes to go about achieving said goals. And the only real difference between like the way a Nick Saban thinks and the way someone who's result-oriented thinks is he's not result-oriented. He is process-oriented. And so a lot of that stuff that he says that maybe you mistakenly identify as coach speak is not coach speak. It's an actual philosophy. It's an actual way of life. And the only goal is to maximize one's potential. If you ever, again, get to be around it, you quickly realize I could just as soon be talking to the head coach at Alabama as I could be talking to the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. These people sound different. They think different. They live different. It's not one compartment of their life and then everywhere else they're just normal. There's not normalcy anywhere. They don't appear normal. If you're hanging out with them on the lake, if you're in the office with them, if you go to church with them, they think differently. If you're at lunch with them, they think differently. And he's just one of those folks, one of the very few. But that whole result-oriented deal, there's beauty in the simplicity. Because if you're focused, like he is, on that whole process thing, and your only goal is to maximize your results, when have you ever arrived? How do you know he's not capable of winning 27 national championships? You know, he probably walks around and thinks, if we're not perfect, then we haven't accomplished anything. If perfection is the goal, you know, if maximizing my potential as a coach and maximizing this program's potential, if that's the real goal, you're telling me about the championships we've won, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them at Alabama. Well, also, if you're looking at the screen right now, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's 7 years where they hadn't won one. What in the world happened there? What may happen this next year? And so my point is it totally unrealistic to win a title every year and to win every game? Yeah. But therein lies the beauty. That means you've never arrived. And here's the other really, really fun aspect of this. This is where the area is that I think Bama and Saban have totally detached themselves from the pack, is the fuel source. What really throws people for a loop when they watch Alabama, when they watch Saban, is when they win, they operate with the same machine-like efficiency the following season as they did when they were on what you would call the climb. I think the detachment is you assume when they win a championship, they have completed their climb. They've arrived at the summit. Maybe that individual team has. But if it's an overall vision, if it's an overall process, then you hear those stories about him chewing out staff the next morning. Let's get out on the recruiting trail. Let's make sure we don't let our foot off the gas. That doesn't make sense to a normal person. Your whole goal is to win a championship, right? No, that ain't the goal. I've heard him before, both in public and in private, talk about his best teams, and him talk about the best teams he's ever coached having one thing in common, and that is none of them made winning a championship the core goal of the program or the organization. It was just be committed to a process, and the process is tied into maximizing your potential. You know what just hit me? You can tell because my eyes got so big, I didn't plan on talking about this. There's a former Alabama All-American, as it were, that perfectly encapsulates what the process is all about. Process over goal. Forrest Gump was his name. And he was serving in Vietnam. And boy, they were where they weren't supposed to be. Lieutenant Dan's called in air support. He's over by the river somewhere. And so it's time to get out of there. And all Forrest Gump did was what Jenny, who I have strong thoughts about as well back home, told him to do. And that is run. And so he ran. And he didn't look to his left. And he didn't look to his right. And he didn't look behind him to just make sure he was ahead of everyone else. He just ran. And then he kept running, kept running, kept running. And then after a while, he slowed down. And he looked around and he was totally alone. Oh, how in the world did that happen? Well, it happened because all he was focused on was the task at hand, and that was running. And it took care of him to the point he was so efficient in the process that that Alabama All-American kick returner turned around and went and rescued Bubba. Well, as much as he could rescue Bubba. Good for Forrest Gump. I'm not going to give you the soundbite of comparing the head coach at Alabama to that fictitious Alabama All-American because I know good and well where that soundbite would go, and it would be no good for me. However, in a much more real sense, that's what it comes down to. The rarest skill, though, is not to think like that. I mean, it's rare to think like that, but you can find some folks. At the highest point of any walk of life, you find folks who think like that. The cream naturally rises to the top. It doesn't have to do with talent. It's got to do with mentality and grit. That's really what it's got to do with. But the rarest skill set, I want you to think about how profound this is and what you're witnessing and why it's really great. He doesn't just think like that. He gets 18 and 19-year-olds to think like that. He gets former failed head coaches to come in and rehab themselves, all while adapting themselves mentally to that process-oriented approach over a result-oriented approach. And those people look around at these celebratory endings that happen more times than not at the end of an Alabama season, and they say, wow, we didn't talk about winning a title a single time this year, and all of a sudden, it's just, here we are. There's confetti raining down all over the place. We ended up winning ourselves a title. That's kind of the way it can happen. But I'll tell you this. Hey, by the way, Colin, so we're going to cut this out of the video when we get done with it. The air conditioner's on the fritz over here. So if you come in here and do your magic and just bang on the wall the way you normally do before the show, that would be great. All right, now here's where we're going to edit the video, so only the live viewers will end up seeing this. The thing about the 10 percenters and really the 30 percenters, you know, let's just say it this way. The thing about 1 percenters is 30% of dudes you hang around think they're the 1 percenter. They'll say things like, oh, bro, I hate to lose. I hate to lose more than I love to win. And they have like a dolphin tattoo on their calf. Buddy, you stay losing. You don't hate to lose. You just, it sounds cool, and all the successful people you watch on TV say it, so I'm going to say it. No, they're the 1% of the 1%. You don't just get to expand it because, well, no one else is around here, and maybe I won't expose myself as a fraud when I say it. But he is. He being Nick Saban is one of the 1 percenters. So when you look at his situation and the Alabama situation, and you hope to yourself, maybe he'll just get tired of winning. You cannot finish if you've never viewed yourself as having arrived. You cannot be done with the mission if you've really never arrived. That's the way they look at it. So eventually he will retire, obviously. I just don't think it's going to come out of boredom, and it's certainly not going to come because he looks around and says, you know, I think we've gotten the job done here. I think we're good, and I think we won. And the last thing, and some of you don't believe this, but it's true. You don't make it this far in this profession without having a service-based approach to your profession. there is an endless supply of kids coming off the high school conveyor belt every year whose lives you can change. And that's really, once you get up in age a little bit and you have a little experience about yourself, you understand the value of giving back as opposed to just taking. Normally it takes some age about yourself to acquire that kind of vision and wisdom. Then you realize at any given point, even when I retire, I'm going to have to retire and look at a high school senior and realize, man, what could I have done for him and his family that the next guy may or may not be able to do? These are the kinds of thoughts that are in the mind of someone like Nick Saban every day. I would just advise you, love Alabama, hate Alabama, learn as much as you can from it, because I don't think we've ever had something like this come through college football. We've had great coaches, we've had great leaders, there will be great coaches and leaders after Nick Saban. There will only be one greatest, and you're watching him in real time right now.